The story of the conflict between Iran, Israel, and the United States did not begin in a single moment, but rather grew from decades of deep hostility, proxy warfare, and strategic rivalry. A rivalry that finally exploded into direct, open military confrontation in 2024 and has since escalated into one of the most dangerous and consequential wars the Middle East has ever witnessed. To understand what is happening today in early March 2026, you have to start with the chain of events that lit the fuse, trace every strike and counterstrike with precision, account for every confirmed casualty and every piece of damage that verified reporting has documented, and follow the logic of escalation from its earliest spark to its current burning state, because only then does the full picture become clear. A picture in which two of the most powerful military forces in the world are now engaged in what amounts to an open war with one of the most heavily armed regional powers, and where the outcome remains genuinely uncertain. The immediate trigger for direct military confrontation between Iran and Israel came on April 1, 2024, when Israeli airstrikes hit the Iranian consulate building in Damascus, Syria, killing 7 officers of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, including Brigadier General Mohammad Reza Zahedi, one of Iran's most senior military commanders in the region. Iran had long operated through proxies, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, the Houthis in Yemen, and various armed militias in Iraq and Syria, using these forces to pressure Israel and American interests without engaging directly. But the killing of a senior IRGC general inside a diplomatic compound crossed a line that Iran's leadership felt it could not ignore without losing credibility both domestically and across its regional network. The response came on the night of April 13-14, 2024, when Iran launched its first-ever direct military attack on Israeli territory from Iranian soil, firing approximately 170 explosive drones, more than 30 cruise missiles, and over 120 ballistic missiles in a massive barrage that was intended to overwhelm Israeli air defenses and deliver a message of Iranian capability and resolve. What actually happened, however, was a strategic and operational embarrassment for Tehran. Israel, assisted by the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and Jordan, intercepted approximately 99% of all incoming projectiles before they could cause significant damage. The IDF reported minimal structural damage, primarily a minor injury to a 7-year-old Bedouin girl struck by shrapnel and the destruction of a small building at the Nevatim Air Base in the Negev Desert, which satellite imagery confirmed had received around 30 missile impacts in its vicinity but sustained limited operational damage. Iran's massive 300-plus projectile assault had, by the military metrics that matter, failed almost completely, though Tehran framed the operation as a deliberate, proportional warning rather than an all-out assault, claiming it had achieved its objective of demonstrating that Iran could and would strike Israel directly. Israel responded on April 19, 2024, with a limited precision strike on an Iranian air defense radar system near Isfahan, a carefully calibrated action designed to demonstrate that Israel could penetrate Iranian air defenses without triggering a broader escalation, and Iran, embarrassed by how easily Israeli missiles had slipped through its defenses, chose not to acknowledge the strike publicly and absorbed the blow without retaliation. The conflict then entered a new phase in the autumn of 2024, driven by a series of dramatic developments in Iran's proxy network. Israel had spent months systematically dismantling the command structures of Hezbollah in Lebanon, killing senior commanders including Hassan Nasrallah, the long-serving leader of Hezbollah, in a massive airstrike on Hezbollah's headquarters in Beirut on September 27, 2024, a strike that decapitated the organization Iran had spent 40 years building and arming. In addition, Israel had already eliminated Ismail Haniyeh, the political leader of Hamas, in a strike in Tehran itself on July 31, 2024, a killing on Iranian soil that represented an extraordinary intelligence and operational penetration of Iran's security apparatus. With its two most powerful proxy forces simultaneously losing their top leadership, Iran concluded that another direct strike was necessary to restore deterrence, and on October 1, 2024, Tehran launched between 180 and 200 ballistic missiles at Israel in what it described as retaliation for the killings of Nasrallah and Haniyeh. This second attack was larger in ballistic missile terms than the April barrage and demonstrated that Iran had refined its approach, relying more heavily on faster, harder-to-intercept ballistic missiles rather than slow drones. Despite the scale of the attack, Israel's Arrow, David's Sling, and Iron Dome systems, again backed by American naval and aerial assets, intercepted the vast majority of the missiles. Satellite images confirmed that approximately 30 missiles struck near the Nevatim Air Base and some landed near the Tel Nof Air Base, but damage to operational infrastructure was again limited. Iranian state media claimed success, while the IDF stated that only one Palestinian civilian and one Israeli were killed, the latter indirectly, with 2 Israeli civilians lightly injured. Israel's retaliation came on October 26, 2024, under the codename Operation Days of Repentance, in which the IDF launched 3 waves of strikes against 20 locations across Iran, Iraq, and Syria, targeting missile production facilities, air defense systems, and military infrastructure. The Institute for the Study of War assessed that this Israeli strike significantly degraded Iran's air defense capabilities and its ability to respond rapidly to future attacks, consequences that would prove decisive in the next round of fighting. By early 2025, the strategic landscape had shifted significantly. Donald Trump had returned to the White House in January 2025 and immediately adopted an aggressive posture toward Iran, reimposing maximum pressure sanctions and publicly demanding that Tehran completely dismantle its nuclear program. The United States and Iran entered a tense diplomatic track in the spring of 2025, with talks exploring whether a new nuclear agreement could be reached. But these negotiations made little meaningful progress as Iran continued enriching uranium at near weapons-grade levels and refused to accept the dismantlement of its centrifuge infrastructure. On June 12, 2025, the International Atomic Energy Agency declared formally that Iran was violating its non-proliferation obligations for the first time in 20 years, a declaration that the United States and Israel had been anticipating and which provided both governments with the diplomatic and legal framing they needed to justify what came next. In the early hours of June 13, 2025, Israel launched what became known as Operation Rising Lion, a massive multi-wave military campaign targeting dozens of Iranian nuclear facilities, missile production sites, military bases, and infrastructure installations across Iran. The Israeli Air Force deployed hundreds of aircraft, and the opening strikes killed several of Iran's most senior military commanders, as well as key nuclear scientists, decapitating both the military command structure and the technical leadership of the nuclear program simultaneously. Iran responded with a barrage of over 500 ballistic missiles and drones aimed at Israeli cities and military installations, the largest single missile attack Iran had ever launched. Israel's air defenses, with continued American support, intercepted the majority of incoming projectiles, though Iranian missiles did cause damage in several areas. According to Al Jazeera's verified reporting based on verified casualty counts, at least 610 Iranians were killed in Israeli attacks during this period, while 28 people in Israel were killed in Iranian counterattacks, a casualty ratio that reflected the profound asymmetry in air defense capabilities between the two sides. On June 22, 2025, the United States Air Force and Navy entered the war directly, conducting strikes on 3 major Iranian nuclear facilities under the codename Operation Opera II, targeting the Fordo enrichment facility buried deep underground, the Natanz centrifuge complex, and the Iraq heavy water reactor, deploying massive ordnance penetrator bunker-busting bombs specifically designed to destroy hardened underground sites. Iran retaliated by firing 14 ballistic missiles at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the largest American military installation in the Middle East, on June 23, 2025, though the U.S. military reported that air defenses at the base successfully intercepted those missiles without casualties among American service members. On June 24, 2025, President Trump announced a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Iran, declaring on social media that there would be a complete and total ceasefire. And while Iran's foreign minister confirmed Tehran's acceptance of the arrangement, the ceasefire was fragile from the start, with both sides retaining unresolved grievances and Iran's nuclear program damaged but not fully destroyed. The ceasefire held through the remainder of 2025, but the underlying tensions were never resolved. Iran began quiet reconstruction efforts at its nuclear sites, dispersing equipment and personnel to undisclosed locations to make future strikes more difficult. The IRGC rebuilt portions of its missile inventory, drew on stockpiles that had been preserved from Israeli targeting, and maintained a posture of public defiance even as its leadership made internal assessments of the severe damage inflicted on its military and nuclear infrastructure during the 12-day war. On the diplomatic front, multiple rounds of talks between U.S. and Iranian negotiators through late 2025 failed to produce a lasting agreement, with Iran insisting on security guarantees and sanctions relief that the Trump administration was unwilling to provide, and the U.S. insisting on complete nuclear dismantlement that Iran was unwilling to accept. By early 2026, intelligence assessments within both the American and Israeli governments concluded that Iran was reconstituting its enrichment capabilities at a pace that could restore a meaningful nuclear capability within months, and both governments concluded that the ceasefire had effectively run its course as a strategic framework. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched the most massive coordinated military operation against Iran in the history of their conflict, under the dual code names Operation Epic Fury for the American component and Operation Raging Lion for the Israeli component. The operation began as a surprise daytime attack, unusual for its timing, designed to maximize disorientation and confusion among Iranian command structures. According to the U.S. Central Command official press release and confirmed reporting from Reuters, The Washington Post, and multiple other verified sources, the Israeli military deployed approximately 200 fighter jets in the initial wave, striking roughly 500 targets, including air defense systems, missile launch sites, and IRGC command and control facilities. The combined U.S.-Israeli force conducted nearly 900 strikes on Iranian targets in the first 12 hours of the campaign alone, according to reporting from the Institute for the Study of War. The targets included, according to U.S. Central Command's official statement, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps command and control facilities, Iranian air defense capabilities, missile and drone production and storage sites, and critically, the compound of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. CIA intelligence gathered over months and shared with Israeli counterparts led to the missile strike that killed Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader since 1989, one of the most significant individual targeted killings in the history of modern warfare. Iranian state media citing the Red Crescent reported at least 201 people killed and more than 700 injured across Iran from the U.S. and Israeli strikes, including 40 killed at a girls' school struck in what Iranian officials described as a targeting error. Explosions were reported simultaneously across Tehran, Tabriz, Qom, Karaj, Khorramabad, and Kermanshah, demonstrating the geographic breadth of the operation. Iran's internet was almost immediately shut down by authorities, limiting independent reporting from inside the country. Iran's retaliation came within hours and was broad in its geographic scope, targeting not only Israel but also the Gulf Arab states that host American military installations. Iran fired hundreds of missiles and drones at targets across the region, striking Dubai and other cities in the United Arab Emirates, where the UAE's defense ministry confirmed 3 people killed and 58 wounded since Iranian strikes began. Iran targeted Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the naval facilities in Bahrain, U.S. military assets in Kuwait, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia, and multiple sites in Israel. In Israel, preliminary figures as of March 1, 2026, showed at least 1 person killed and approximately 121 injured. At least 3 oil tankers in the Gulf were damaged by Iranian strikes, according to Reuters, threatening the flow of global energy supplies through one of the world's most critical maritime corridors. According to reporting confirmed by the New York Times, over 100 people were injured and at least 4 killed across Gulf cities from Iranian missile and drone attacks, with Dubai's travel and tourism infrastructure struck in a manner that rattled financial markets and sent shockwaves through the Gulf's carefully constructed image of stable neutrality. In terms of American casualties, U.S. Central Command confirmed on March 1, 2026, that 3 U.S. service members had been killed in action and 5 others seriously wounded during Operation Epic Fury, the first confirmed American combat deaths in direct military operations against Iran. President Trump publicly stated that the operation was ahead of schedule and indicated that major combat operations were moving toward their objectives, while Israel announced it was targeting the entire political and military leadership of Iran, both past, present, and future, according to Israeli officials cited by Axios. As of March 1, 2026, Iran's supreme leader is dead. Its nuclear facilities have been struck twice by American and Israeli forces. Its air defense infrastructure has been severely degraded across multiple rounds of strikes since October 2024. Its proxy network has been significantly weakened, with Hezbollah and Hamas both having lost their senior leadership, and it is now absorbing the most intense military campaign ever directed against it while fighting back across multiple fronts simultaneously. Iran's retaliatory capacity, while still capable of causing real damage as evidenced by the strikes in Israel, the UAE, and Gulf states, has been progressively reduced with each military exchange. The U.S. and Israel, by contrast, have suffered limited but real casualties. 3 American soldiers killed, dozens of Israeli civilians injured, and retain overwhelming military superiority in the air, in precision strike capability, and in active missile defense. Who is winning at this moment is a question with a factual answer in military terms. The U.S.-Israel coalition has destroyed far more than it has lost, killed Iran's supreme leader, degraded Iran's nuclear program significantly, and is prosecuting a campaign that Iran's weakened defenses cannot reverse. But the political and regional consequences of this war, the identity of whatever government eventually emerges in Tehran, and the long-term stability of the Middle East remain deeply and genuinely uncertain, because in modern warfare the side that destroys the most infrastructure does not always determine what comes next.